Hello, everybody. It's Leonard Murphy with another edition of our CEO series of interviews. And today, this is one that I have wanted to get for a long time. So big shout out to our mutual friends, Jeff Krentz and Martin Fills, for helping to make it happen. I am joined by Anurag Banerjee, the CEO and co-founder of Quilt AI. Anurag, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited. And Jeff and Martin are really nice people. So I'm excited to be like riding on the coattails here.
They are, and they say the same about you. So there's a mutual admiration society going on. So I'm going to let you tell the story of Quilt, and then we'll dive in. So I'll add some context for our listeners, but let's just get into, tell us your story and the Quilt story, and then we'll get into details.
Sure. I was in corporate America for a long time, and then starting 2012, I started building companies, and Quilt is a third in that series. And I had the good fortune of meeting my current co-founder, Dr. Angad Chaudhary, whose birthday it is today, funnily enough.
Happy birthday.
And exactly, happy birthday to Angad. And our mission was to index humanity based on how they represented themselves on the internet. So we thought of Google having indexed information, but there wasn't this index of humanity, if you will. So from an anthropological perspective, Angad is a PhD in anthropology. Like, how do we build something that enables us to understand people better? When we were starting the company, it was the time of Cambridge Analytica. So that was a complicated time in human history, obviously, right. For multiple reasons. And we felt that there was a better way for me to understand Lenny and vice versa. And there was this poignant moment when Angad was home, and my then 6-year-old daughter asked Angad, so what are you guys doing? What are you building? And I tried to explain it with some tech and AI, and then Angad stepped in smoothly, and he said, well, who's your best friend? And my daughter named a particular child, and he said, why is she your best friend? And she says, well, because I know everything about her. And I'm just like, yeah, and that's what Daddy and I are trying to build. We're trying to build a framework where you know more about the other, and if you do, you understand more, you hate less, etc. So Quilt is while we are in the sort of consumer research space, we're in the people understanding business, and we work with philanthropies and with marketers on helping them understand their constituents better based on everything on the internet. And the AI tools are a way of getting to that end.
So that's fascinating. The mentioning the friends at Cambridge Analytica, because there had been this throughput for a while from the advent of social media. With social media analytics will replace primary research, and no, it did not replace primary research, but it certainly augmented it. And as were all of the other data feeds, the digital exhaust of our lives, right? They become very useful. And that's continued, right? And then, of course, Cambridge Analytica was this interesting mix of primary research plus kind of digital exhaust to create profiles of people, and obviously was a very effective marketing solution. Take aside everything else, right? It powered marketing results. They did,
right.
Whether you like their results or not. But we still had not seen anything with that interesting mix that you have just applied around anthropology, with that particular lens of taking this data and structuring it in a way from that anthropological lens, but aligned to business issues. And it's what I found so fascinating about Quilt is I looked at you as a company and through our introductions and thought, man, this is what the world is going to look like from a research perspective. Fundamentally, my view would be there's a data layer, right? And that data layer may be primary. It may be what we think of as kind of digital exhaust or secondary. Then there's a series of apps built on top of that are aligned to a specific business issue. So an ad test, right? Segmentation, whatever the case may be. But then with this, if I understand correctly, there's also kind of this human curation component that is there as well to ensure that we're capturing that anthropological component. But it's all driven by technology. Did I capture that correctly? Is that kind of at a very high level the structure of the business?
Yeah, 100%. It's fascinating you said apps, because that's exactly what a Sphere platform is. A set of apps that sit on top of digital data. We have the ability, and some organizations do input their brand health trackers, their qual studies into it, and we mix and match information. So um, there is no one way to know a human being. You can't know them through a focus group completely. You can't know them through a survey, and you can't know them through the digital exhaust. But when they come together, a bit of magic happens. And our job is to be one component of that magic, as we're saying, oh, the only way to study people is by Quilt, which is, incorrect and arrogant.
Yeah, no, but that's interesting. Even my own journey recently of utilizing AI for that synthesis. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that, right? That I've been from a speed standpoint. I just recently had a couple projects that dropped on my lap, and they had to be quick turnaround, and there was like no way in hell I can do this in the time frames you want, unless I used AI to synthesize my own proprietary data, like the grit report, things like that, with secondary, put it together, with the context, and deliver it. And it was incredibly eye-opening for me to experience that firsthand. I mean, I knew it theoretically. I talk about it all the time, but that impact. But you've done that at scale, effectively.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's
we can do a multi-country segmentation study in, take a guess, how many weeks, hours, days, months, many.
Based on my experience, I would guess that certainly less than 24 hours, and with the bulk of that probably just being whatever human intervention there is to point it in the right direction. Is that?
Yeah, like a 120-page deck looks like this beautiful finished McKinsey/Kantar report is 24 hours or less, which is my. And when we started, it was probably 2 weeks. And
Yep.
It's iteratively gone down faster and faster and faster, from data collection to analysis to articulation, writing, and representation in that. Because the PowerPoint is the killer app, as I always joke. So it has to be in a deck for it to be.
Yeah. Now that's the part that I have not found personally yet. I've played with things like Dectopus and some of that, but it's still kind of a pain in the butt. It's not quite there, but
yes.
All right. So our listeners are predominantly traditional market researchers and a mix of suppliers and buyers. And I expect many of them are experiencing an urgent need to go to the bathroom right this moment, because what you describe is incredibly disintermediating to the traditional model of research. Now, I would say, if you've been listening to me, which, sorry, this sounds arrogant, but for the past 10 years, shouldn't be surprised, because it was logical that we were going to see companies like you emerge. But it sounds like that your position is that you do some specific things, but it is also the synthesis of primary research that is part of that process and adds more depth on the deliverables. Is that accurate? So, say somebody has focus group transcripts that go deeper. Yeah.
Yes. So we think of ourselves as primary researchers, and the difference between, say, a social listening company, and we need them for so many things like campaign measurements. So the Brand Watches the world, Meltwaters, Talkwalkers are amazing companies, and they have a very, very clear function. Our function is to study Lenny. So if I take Lenny in this frame, and it might be #green book, which is what is studied in digital exhaust, but I'm decoding the curtains, the books behind you, the curation that's happening in this podcast, and coding so many other things. So we have 25 billion visual tags that we are applying. So when a TikTok video happens, it isn't just #Nike. There's a mom and a daughter running on a beach. It's about, perseverance, strength, family, all those codes that a researcher would, see while doing an ethnography or a focus group are what we get. So, but it is still not complete. You still want to ask the lady how much she ran, when she ran, what she ate, and I may not get all of that from the Instagram. So the complementarity of different data sets, whether it's a panel or a focus group, is super important, because without that, the marketer will never have complete information. I believe I'm the best at internet research, but that is, again, one component of a person's life.
Got it. Back in the day, there was a term called netnography that was going around.
Yes.
It kind of fell out of style, but effectively, that's what you are doing is
Yeah.
netnography. Um, I'm conscious of your time for our listeners.
I can go for a bit, yeah.
You go for a little bit longer, all right? Because we were chatting before this, and we kind of ate up a little bit of our time with our pre-interview conversation. So thank you for any additional time. So, sorry, lots of questions going through my head. First, let's talk about the impact of technology, because you started building this before generative AI exploded onto the scene. So, double barrel question. What has been the impact on your business from a delivery standpoint from the explosion of generative AI from a technology standpoint? And have you seen a difference in acceptance of your solution on the buyer side because of, oh, what? ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, I can do all of these cool things. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's definitely helped us from a business delivery perspective, and primarily in the articulation of the language.
Mm-hmm.
So the way AI today sits for all of us is it's primarily an LLM based interface. But there's so many other things in AI that are not being necessarily talked about or used because we have this way to articulate the answer to a question, or you upload a report and you get that output. So we have other things that we do outside of this large language model plugin that we have, which writes stuff for us.
Right.
The second part actually is interesting. We launched our first generative product in 2020 in Megatron from NVIDIA. And I think 6 people signed up. 2 of them are my parents. And nobody really cared. And then ChatGPT dropped and our phones began to ring off the hook saying, "Oi, you're the AI guys. Can you come back and talk to us about that?" Mm-hmm. So we benefited from the trend. And Sequoia investing always talks about, think about the slope, not the intercept and where you are at that point in time. So the slope is wild. Yeah. And we're just trying to keep up on the slope. The fascinating part is that it is now getting regulated inside companies. So there are Gen AI councils being set up and Gen AI protocols. And so a large part of the work that Angad and I do is actually appearing in front of boards and procurement councils and saying, here's a Gen AI framework, right, that you should ask the questions on. So Claude does some things that are amazing, and here's how you should plug it in versus Mistral versus other vertical platforms that are there like Harvey, etc. So we're benefiting from, I guess, a consumer love for AI. And some of that is we were just lucky to be the right. I mean, Quilt.ai is a domain when we bought it 7 years ago. We also bought like 100 other domains. We were like, AI domains are like, pennies in the dollar, right?
Right.
And now, it's hard to get an AI domain, which is really funny. So we definitely had, I think, good fortune by being early.
Oh, that's very cool. Now we had talked beforehand that you have what many would probably should be a fairly novel perspective on sales. That you do not have a sales team, that it is all kind of inbound referral. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you got to that point, and how successful that's been. Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people listening. Oh, really? How do I not have salespeople?
Yeah. No, salespeople have a great function, and I think the best sales teams have so much discipline and run such amazing processes that I think the size of our business became, is a lucky accident. We wanted to have 2 or 3 really interesting clients that we do interesting work for, and the 2 of us with 3 or 4 people could manage that. So you could be in a company of 10 and do a couple of $1 million, and that would be fantastic. Yeah. And then a client referred to another client, and so it was. And we said we'll just keep doing good work, and that sounds really cool in retrospect, but at that point in time, we were like, oh, okay, 1 more client. So Lenny came on, and Lenny referred Jeff, and that was great. And then Jeff moved to another company, and something else happened. So it started blowing up, and then we started a newsletter, which we would send out to people, which were not even our clients, and just share information and knowledge. And it was about weird trends like the Labubu phenomenon, or like We did Brat Summer before it broke, and Mob Wife, and weird food ingredients. And I like to write. I don't write well, but I like to write. And so we'd send these out. And then it felt like the wrong thing to do was to force Lenny or any client into a buying decision, because I hate being sold to.
Yep.
And I would rather walk into something and just pick things and buy, or I run away. So like, how can I'm sure that people like me who don't want to be pitched all the time. And so we said, let's just build great content. Our website has like too much content. We have thousands of visitors a day that come into this just to read stuff, and they spend like 33 minutes on average. I'm like, there's a value we are creating there. So, and now we hold on very strongly to the fact that we don't have any salespeople. And it's, it's not yet a 9-figure business, but it'll get there, relatively quickly. And that's just because of goodwill and us doing interesting work. And it feels really weird, I know, but it seems to work for us.
I think it's wonderful. Now, has a piece of that also been that you have not that your focus has been more on mission and value creation for clients versus acceleration? So I don't think that I think you had a Series A, but you haven't gotten on the rocket ride, right? And I'm willing to bet there's investors calling you every day. Can we throw a gajillion dollars at you to accelerate the business? But that would change that process, right? It would tie you to a culture maybe that you've very purposely said, I don't want that. We want to build a good, solid what I'm hearing is we want to build a good, solid business that does good work and is provocative and helps people. And through that, organically, you're going to achieve certain levels of success. Did I capture that right? That's kind of your position.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want $1 bajillion to become the next whatever big.
Yeah, I mean, people aren't calling you every day, but there's a it's frequent enough, and I think there are many good reasons to take capital, and I think we can certainly build things that we're not building today because of you're trying to manage your balance sheet, etc. And while we are strongly profitable, you're still allocating capital in a frugal young startup model, which I know we've graduated away from. I think at some point in time, capital won't be because I don't think of capital as a bad thing. We have an investor who is extremely long-term, like multi-decade view. And when we did the Series A, we had obviously multiple term sheets, and we picked this investor because of just like, do good work and give us a return when you can, unlike a 4-year fund cycle. But I would say being in a 4-year fund cycle is also great because it teaches you certain things of aggressively saying no and cutting and moving, and some of that muscle we don't have. So there's definitely some, I'd say, flaws in our model that have come, but it's our model at this point in time. So we'll see where it takes us.
I think it's inspirational in many ways. So so what does the future look like for you? Both individually and as a company, where do you see things being in 2 years?
I'm so glad you said 2 years and not 5, because you can actually look out, I think 6-8 months now, and 2 years you can make a leap to. So thank you for that. I'm really, really envious and impressed by the trust that a lot of the legacy organizations have built. So when I see leaders at a Kantar or Ipsos or Nielsen or many others that are there, that have been around for like decades, there's a level of trust that they've built that I aspire to have. And we have that in some spaces, but at the scale that they have, like there's 7,000 client management team at Kantar. There are these deep relationships, and I've done great work over decades. I want to get there. I want to be in the position of trust, because the complicated part of AI is there's anybody can write code today. So there is honestly no moat. Anybody can do a quick set of analytics, like you just talked about, you doing that piece of work. There are tools. So the the arc where knowledge meets digital work is going to go to zero, and you're going to be left with wisdom and trust. And so the aspiration of Quilt is, how do we become, wiser, like the big companies have, and how do we have the trust that they have? Our technology is significantly better than anything in the market, obviously. And if you just ran 10 jobs on GPT and 10 jobs on us, you'd see we would win all day long. But what we don't have yet is that multi-decade strong trust and reliance and frameworks that the world has enjoyed and loved, right? So that's the hope.
All right. So this may sound self-serving, and that's not my intention. To achieve that, people need to know about you. And I think you're kind of the best kept secret out there. I mean, your strategy at this point obviously has served you very well. But even I didn't know about you, which sounds arrogant, but it's kind of my job to know about companies like you. And I didn't see you on the radar, right? So, so is there as you look forward to achieve that goal, a thinking of, all right, we've built a fantastic word of mouth referral business. Obviously, you get SEO benefits from having all the content, right? There's a great inbound funnel. But to start engaging in a more active way externally, whether it's through platforms like Greenbook or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But to have more of an outbound perspective to engage with the broader industry. Is that part of your thinking?
It should be. So both Angad and I suck at sales and suck at marketing in that conventional way. I realize it's a podcast. I should have framed that language better. But
no, not at all.
It's the truth, right? We're terrible at it. We've done some sponsorships. I think the issue sometimes is, as a sponsor, they have you up on stage and speaking, and it just feels like pay to play.
Yeah.
And I'm allergic to pay to play. I mean, I hope. But having said that, we need to engage for sure and engage better. It'll also help us, honestly, in getting good talent.
Yep.
And there's senior talent that we would love to get. And I'm making a pitch here for that. So we have several open senior positions that we'd love to fill. And right now they don't know, like you don't know about us, they don't know about us. So we're kind of hurting ourselves a bit here. So we need to sort of, put on a brave face and go out and, do some speaking at these events and sponsor some of these events, which we'd be happy to.
Yeah, well, we can have a follow-up conversation about that. But setting that aside, I mean, I think the importance is, because I've seen this with other disruptors over the years in the industry, right? The early social media analytics companies that were kind of resistant to playing in this arena. And my position always was, and we saw the same thing with Qualtrics, Zappy, others. It's like, you are, because of your just position now, you have the ability, I would think, to start building an ecosystem around you. And that's important for this interconnectivity. To your point, you're not going to be the answer to everything, but you have the ability to help synthesize information that can be. And if you're the tip of the spear from an engagement process through trust with your buyers, then that more active outreach and building of that ecosystem, I would encourage you to think about, because I have not seen another company in this specific era around the AI centricity that is native, right, has built that in, that they're all early. It's all early stage, right? Or it's all, later stage companies that are trying to adapt, but they're trying to protect their existing revenue streams. And it's just not an easy transition for those companies. So I think that you're in a unique position to kind of leverage that mentality and start building that ecosystem around you. And I would encourage you to think about doing that. And again, we can have an offline conversation. And because I think what you're doing is important, right? You are the equivalent of, like the other example would be the DIY explosion, right? SurveyMonkey. The industry sneered at SurveyMonkey, right? And you know, they looked down at them with this DIY surveys, unprofessional, et cetera, until it came out that they had $1 billion valuation, right? And then everybody, you know, you said suck, I'll say, you know, everybody said WTF, you know, and that woke people up to realize that the world had changed and that there was lots of other use cases for technology and different solutions and different approaches that were complementary and to traditional market research, and to ignore that was wrong. And then companies like SurveyMonkey started to engage in building ecosystems and, you know, became kind of nexus centers within the industry. I think you have that same potential. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but that's why I was excited to have this conversation, right?
Yeah, it's very kind. You know, two things came to mind as you were articulating that, Lenny. One is about how we are a piece of the puzzle and how we work, you know, in great complementarity. So last night, the US East Coast time, I was talking to our common friend, Martin Fields' team. We have a construct with them where they, you know, we've given them certain apps, as you said, to take to market. And the point I was making to their sales team was that, look, this is the tip of the spear. And when something happens, they're going to come and say, okay, I want to know more about the consumer now. And then, you know, you have a business that answers that, and we have we have other apps we can do. So the symbiosis is really nice, and I think I'm glad that that's working out. We have done historically an event. Well, historically is an exaggeration. For the last 2 years, we've done an event in New York, and we call it the evolution of culture, but spelled as AI evolution. So AI, and we're trying to talk about how culture and AI work together in like movies, in art, in theater, in music, and how it delivers stuff in the marketing consumer research space. So, but you know, we held that as our own invite-only event, and I feel that we need to open that up a lot more. We need to take that content. There's, you know, we had like a really cool place where someone could take a photo of Lenny, and a poem would come out, right? It would be haiku poem, which would just define Lenny. And to me, those are the kinds of things but those are the kinds of things that, you know, are like AI music while respecting the rights of AI creators. So my young son loves making music, and he's like, "Ooh, I want to use the Suno app." But what's nice is you can't make a song that is like Noah Khan's, copyright on it. But that intersection of cultures of film, fashion, poetry, beauty, music with AI is such a vibrant space. And yes, we should also answer whether people want to drink a Coke or have a burger or wear Nike shoes. But I want to take that construct and whether it's Green Book or other spaces. I want to talk about that and less about, is it somebody aware of your product and into that general format, but have a lot more fun with the technology.
I totally agree. Before this call, I was actually working with right. I've been experimenting with all the different LLMs like you have been, and they do different things. But my current favorite is Grok 3, just because I like the interface is it's scary conversational. Anyway, and creating a blog post on the theory of consciousness, right? And pulling in from all these different sources because I've been just kind of obsessed with this idea of the role of intuition and how does that play. And anyway, whole other conversation. But to your point, that's it's fun and interesting and engaging to be able to pull these disparate sources of information together around something that doesn't really have much business value. It's just it's an interesting thing that I just enjoyed thinking about, right? So I love that idea of having a different perspective. And the business comes as people connect the dots internally, and I could take that and apply it to this business issue that we have. So, we should have a follow-up conversation about that. Yeah, you've been very generous with your time, more than we anticipated, and we could go on for a very long time. Glad that you're working. As the audience knows, I'm an advisor to Pure Profile, so that's great. You're working with Martin. That's really cool. I'm sure that we will have other conversations in the future, and I hope that we do have the opportunity to either do this or to help expose you in some way to the broader world, because I think what you're doing is emblematic of what the future of the industry is going to look like. And for our audience members, that doesn't mean that your existing businesses are inferior in any way. I think this is just, you're just building the next generation mousetrap based on existing needs, and that's just really, it's really cool and exciting.
Agreed. Thank you for having me on, Lenny. I appreciate that, and thank you for exposing me to the audience. I am grateful. This might be the beginning of us getting our act together on how we communicate publicly.
Well, I've looked at your site and your content. You are pretty good at communication. One last question on the note: do you know the folks at CB Insights?
I know. I read them. I love their content. I think Anand and I overlapped with American Express, though his career's been such an amazing arc. And I love that he finishes every newsletter with "Love."
I love you.
Anand. It's amazing. I love you. I thought that's a spectacular touch, and he did it well before it was cool to say stuff like this. So yeah, I'm in awe of what they've built.
Yeah, well, the strategy you're describing obviously reminded me of of theirs as well. Just creating really good and engaging content. There's very few newsletters I look forward to every day, and that's absolutely one of them, because of it felt personal, even though it was not necessarily personalized to me.
Right.
But it felt very personal. So interesting that you overlapped a little bit and kind of take a different approach. Okay. Anyway, where can people find you? How can people connect with you directly?
Quilt. So it's Anurag at quilt.ai is a great way to find me. I respond to email, happily. On the website, we have a few places, but our website is a little hard to find a contact, because we don't want to have like too many pop-ups and CTAs there. So it's Anurag at quilt.ai is a great way to find me. I'd be happy to chat with whoever would like to reach out.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you to our listeners, to sponsors, producers, et cetera, et cetera. That is it for this edition of the CEO series. We'll be back soon with another one real soon.
Thanks, Lenny.
Thank you. Oh, stop. There we go.